Good afternoon, students. Uh, Today we will discuss the short story titled Goodbye Africa, written by Gugi wa Thiago. This short story is prescribed for final year optional English students of University of Mysore, paper 9, QP code 11809. This short story has three main characters: the colonial officer, his wife, and Shamba boy. The Shamba boy appears only through the memory of the colonial officer and his wife. Now, let us look at the summary of this short story. In the short story Goodbye Africa, both the colonial officer and his wife are troubled by guilt. They both think about their past and are haunted by it. The officer, who has stayed in Africa for many years and has worked in Kenya, is compelled to retire. He has been replaced by another. His position has been occupied by another officer. He had come to Kenya from his native place in England with the noble intention of civilizing this dark continent and lifting it to the stage of history. In the process, he had been a person of authority. He has killed many Mau Mau rebels. Mau Mau rebellion took place as a fight for freedom. The colonial officer had to put down this rebellion and kill many native Africans. The work done by him, the act of killings done by him returned to haunt him. He, however, clings to the justification of imperialism. The story begins on the last day of the colonial officer's stay in Africa. The wife goes to make coffee while the colonial officer waits for her. That is how the story begins. The wife brings the coffee and serves it to her husband. They are both silent. So the wife breaks the silence by saying that the thought of leaving Africa had not bothered her until that night. They have stayed in Africa for a long time and now they are forced to leave this place. They had many experiences there. Their life in Kenya has been eventful, and she herself knows that the comment made by her, that is, she will not be sad leaving this place. She knows that this is not true. Her insincerity, the insincerity in her comment, makes her silent. Since both the husband and wife are silent, the reader feels that there is some misunderstanding between them, and the wife feels that she has to be different when they return to England and begin a new life. She feels that she has to be more compassionate and more understanding towards her husband. She feels that she has made a life difficult for her husband, so she makes her mind to be more kind towards him. The husband, we note, is engrossed in his own thoughts. He is thinking about the failures in his life and how even his wife did not understand him, and how she has been critical of him all the time. So he has been troubled by all this throughout his stay in Kenya. So, to escape the feelings of guilt, the colonial officer has taken to drinking. And in the beginning of the story, also, we note that the colonial officer is trembling, his fingers are shaking, and he has to drink to stop himself from shivering. The killing of the Shamba boy keeps reenacting in his mind, in his dreams. The boy had been his servant. The Shamba boy had been very obedient and God loving. The colonial officer liked him a lot. He felt fatherly towards this boy. And then suddenly one day, the boy who had been very obedient suddenly rejects the Christmas present given to him by the colonial officer and walked out of his servant. The colonial officer was hurt by this incident, but he could have forgiven the boy, but he couldn't do it because as the boy left, the wife became extremely sad, and the colonial officer could not forgive. The extreme sadness in the wife's face when the boy left his service could not be forgotten by colonial officer. Now, the colonial officer starts drinking. He feels that drinking will give him confidence. The wife tells him that he should join her to sleep, but the colonial officer says that he will join her later. And after some time, the colonial officer feels that he should go for a drive. In a drunken state, he feels that driving would make him better, feel better, and we all know how dangerous it is. But the colonial officer goes for a drive, and he drives very haphazardly. Miraculously, nothing happens to him, and he stops somewhere in the middle of the forest, in the midst of darkness, and he thinks over and over again all the incidents that has happened to him during his stay in Kenya, and he is most troubled by the ghost of the Shamba boy, which keeps appearing in his dreams during day and night. So he wants to stop the visitations of the Shamba boy, and the colonial officer had heard, he had known by experience that the black magic practiced by native people will prevent visitations of ghosts. So he hopes to stop the Shamba boy's visitations by resorting to some black magic. But sadly, he remembers that he has not brought the necessary items for performing black magic. He knows that wax is an item required to perform black magic, and he has not brought it. So he drops the idea of performing black magic. Later, and the colonial officer thinks that he should write a letter to his wife. He should tell her what all problems he had during his stay in Kenya, during his job in the colonial officer's grade, what all difficulties he had to face, and how he wants her to understand him, and how they can lead a happy life in England. So he begins to write the letter to her. He tells her that he had done his part as a colonial officer. He had done it to the best of his capability, and he did not get promotion as he had expected, but that was not in his control. So people were getting promoted and he was not, therefore he was getting disappointed. And on one such incident, when he had gone to put down the Mau Mau rebellion, the Shamba boy appeared before him. The Shamba boy who had spurned his gift appeared before him with a sneer on his face. And because of all the failures in the professional career that he had, the Shamba boy's appearance irritated him a lot. He could not control himself any further and shot the Shamba boy. So the colonial officer finishes writing his letter, and after writing this letter, he feels better. The the act of writing the letter makes him feel better, because it seems to have a purgatory effect on him. In the concluding portion of his letter, he tells his wife that Africa has made him lonely and insecure. Therefore, he wants to begin a new life in England after saying goodbye to Africa. He wants to stay in England and lead a happy life with his wife. So the colonial officer returns home to give the letter to his wife, who is waiting for him. And when he is about to give the letter, the wife tells him that she also has a story to tell. The wife tells him that when they landed in Kenya, she was also as enthusiastic as he was. She wanted to join with him in all the civilizing mission that he was doing. She wanted to be a part of it, but soon she got disappointed, because the wife was lonely at home and the husband was busy at work. She was always very lonely. The work had taken away her husband. So she also knew that whatever the husband was doing really did not have any meaning at all, because according to her, who were they to civilize anyone? Nobody can do nobody can bring about any change in Africa or anywhere else, because nobody can civilize anybody else. So this realization had come to the wife earlier. So she felt very disappointed in whatever her husband was doing. Then, on one of her lonely walks, she had met the Shamba boy with whom she had a relationship. When the wife tells the husband about the Shamba boy, a kind of dullness had crept into his limbs, into his mouth, into his heart. The colonial officer realizes that in his mission to reach the top, he had neglected his house and another had occupied his place. Thus, the man and Africa would forever pursue him. So, when we read the title of the story, we understand that Africa is something which has overpowered the colonial officer and his wife. They wanted to civilize Africa, but they are overpowered by the African country, and whatever they wanted to do in Africa has in a way destroyed them. So they cannot totally forget whatever experiences they had in Kenya. So they can never forget and never really say goodbye to Africa. The thoughts, the feelings, the experiences they had in Kenya can never be forgotten by them. So, the thought of forgetting Kenya, going back to England, and leading a happy life there is only is not at all a realistic dream. So it is just a dream which is not going to be a reality. So in this way, by the end of the story, both the wife and husband, though they reveal their secrets to each other, they are not able to lead a happy and comfortable life in future. The story ends at this place, and the readers are left left to think what will be the future of the couple, because the story has an abrupt ending. The reader is left to find for himself what can happen to these couple. So with this, we can try to understand the meaning of the title, how it is ironically stated. We all know what the meaning of irony is. When one says goodbye, it means that they are going to go away from Africa forever. Maybe they'll forget whatever has happened in Africa, and they will lead a happy life. But in case of the colonial officer and his wife, that is not going to take place. Africa is going to haunt them forever. The guilt of whatever they had done in Africa is going to haunt them, is going to follow them to wherever they are going to go. So in this way, the title is ironical. Secondly, the themes of guilt and forgetfulness, and then memory and rebellion, all of these are there in this story, and you should pay attention to it as you read the story. Thank you.